Our story today then is Beowulf. And this is a pretty old one. I mean, most of the ones we do are pretty old, to be fair. But this one goes back to a time before the stories of King Arthur. Um, Maybe not the setting, but probably the actual stories do. This story we have written as a poem from about the 11th century. At least that's the version that we've got. This poem is probably a bit earlier than that. So it's a poem from Anglo-Saxon Britain. A time when Britain had been, well, the Romans have left, and the Britons, so King Arthur's lot, they've all been pushed out by the White Dragon that are the Anglo-Saxons. If you remember that myth, the red dragon represented the Britons, and the white dragon represented the Saxons. And by this time in history, we're talking maybe a little bit after Alfred the Great, something like that. By this time, the Saxons have completely taken over Britain, pretty much, except for the corners like Wales and Cornwall. If someone could please stop just oohing in the chat, that would be brilliant, because then I can actually read what's going on. Um, but this story, even though it is written by Anglo-Saxons in Britain, it's not set in Britain. It's set in Scandinavia, so mainly Denmark and Sweden. And we've come here because that's where the Anglo-Saxons came from originally. They came from Scandinavia and northern Germany. And so the people who were living in Britain at this time, they would have remembered well Scandinavia. They may well have even visited there every now and again. There's a Viking raider in the chat who says that their dad grew up on the border of Wales, on the marches, as they used to call it, yes, between the land of the Britons and the land of the Saxons, yeah. So, our story starts with a king, not Beowulf himself, because he's not a king. He's what we call a yat. But the king lives in Denmark, down here. Here's where the Danes live. And you can see on our map, if we zoom in a little bit, you can see that this is where the Angles come from. So that's where we get Anglo-Saxons, of course. But our story starts in Denmark itself, which is just here. If we were looking for Britain, we'd have to go this way, off to the west to find it. Anglesey, yes, yes, cool. But our story starts with this king here, King Hrothgar. Ooh, he looks pretty cool, doesn't he? I like this picture. I like how hairy he is. Lots of hair. Now, King Hrothgar is a pretty good king. He's strong. He's a bit of a hero, but he is getting old. You know, there could be legends and tales about King Hrothgar on his own, I imagine. Not that I know of them, but he's the kind of guy that probably did some cool things, you know, running around, fighting enemies, all this kind of stuff. But by the time we meet him and our story starts, Hrothgar is getting old. You know, he's an old king, a wise king, and he's famous for being very good to his followers. He likes to make sure that the people who help him in his kingdom, his trusty men and women who fight for him and build things for him, he likes to know that they are looked after. He's a kind and generous king, that's what we're told. A big Grendel, good name, asks, didn't Michael Morpurgo write about Beowulf? He may well have done, yes. Lots of people have, and there's loads of versions of this story. Because it is such an old story, and because the poem as it's originally given to us is at points a little bit confusing. It's hard to tell what's actually going on. In fact, some people think that it may be two poems that have been taken and sort of slammed together. But that means that it's ripe for authors and storytellers like me to go and make our own versions and add our own little details. So if you have heard this story before, like lots of our other myths, you may have, you know, slightly different ideas, slightly different versions. And it sounds like the kind of thing that Michael Morpurgo would have a go at. Yeah. Now, a Viking raider says that King Hrothgar looks like Dumbledore's brother. Yeah, maybe a little bit Dumbledore going on there. It's the beard, isn't it? So, King Hrothgar, he's had a long and successful career. There he is in Denmark, and he decides to build a massive hall a wonderful, great, big drinking hall and feasting hall. Here we got it here called Hello, or I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. Um, Now, Hello is this great big place with one real purpose: partying, celebration. And of course, if you're a king who's wealthy and has lived a good kinging life and managed to gather up lots of cool stuff, then having parties should be quite a common feature. Um, and Hrothgar, he builds this massive hall with the express intention of partying as much as he can, with his men, of course, not on his own. That would be a boring kind of party. Um, Yay, says Explorer Gengar, just loads of partying. And, well, this isn't going to be a necessarily good thing. Jasper says that the Hello here looks like the city in the Lord of the Rings movie. It does, doesn't it? It looks like where the Rowan people live. J.R.R. Tolkien certainly read Beowulf a lot. And so a lot of the Lord of the Rings is based on things from Beowulf or ideas from Beowulf. So there you go. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Mm. Um, so, this hall, you got to imagine, it takes a long time to build. King Hrothgar is kind of building it as his crowning glory. You know, he's an older king. He's going to die eventually, you know, relatively soon. And so he wants to leave behind this great big hall to sort of celebrate himself, but also to give something to his people, make his people happy, give them something to do, partying. And so it takes a while to build, but once it is built, it is filled with happy Danes who have very loud, very noisy parties a lot of the time. Now, just imagine for a second that you decide in your garden to build a great big drinking hall. Really big. And you're going to fill it with people. And every night, or at least most nights, there's going to be really loud parties in there. So there's lots of people shouting and laughing. There's going to be lots of loud music being played, maybe people dancing and thumping around, maybe the odd friendly fight, because these are Vikings that we're talking about here, sort of, at least Danes. And so it's a bit of a raucous place. Lots of lights all around it. You know, it's lit up inside by a great big fire and loads of burning torches. And all around the edge, there'd be torches too. The whole thing would have been quite loud. Now, if you did that in your garden, it probably wouldn't be long before your neighbours started to complain and probably eventually sent the police round to make you be quiet. Can't really do that. Now, even though this is a long time ago in history, the same basic idea applies. But it's not King Hrothgar's human enemies that get annoyed. It is something altogether more frightening. So, one night, in the middle of one of these parties, along comes the monstrous beast that is Grendel. Here's a representation of Grendel. Now, we don't exactly know what Grendel looks like. Some people say he's like a giant. Some people say he's like a troll. Some people say he's like a swamp beast. Ooh. Eliza is saying that she has had experience in this very field, yes, of noisy people partying all night. Yeah, well, now you know how Grendel feels. He's been living in Denmark quite peacefully for quite a long time. And he's been having a fine time about it. Doesn't bother anyone. But then they build this hall, and then they fill it with noisy parties. And poor old Grendel, he has to try and sleep every night with this boom, 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 boom noise in the background as people are partying all the time. Ooh. Jasper says, looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon. I suppose so. It is a bit swampy. Bit swampy is Grendel, yes. So, Grendel smashes into the Hall of Harlot. Bilal says he looks like he has chicken legs. Yes, he does. Yeah, in this picture, he has got chicken legs, doesn't he? We don't know exactly from the original poem what he looked like, but I do like this picture. It sums him up quite nicely as this terrifying beastie. He smashes into the hall and he just starts eating people. He's grabbing them, he's chucking them about, he's shoving them in his mouth. It's terrifying for everyone involved because, of course, they were having a nice party and now there's a monster and the monster's eating their legs. Not good. So, a lot of the people run away. A lot of the people don't manage to run away and just get eaten. King Hrothgar and some of his main men around him, they charge at the monster and try to kill him, but they cannot. No matter what they do, the monster is just too tough, too powerful. They're hitting it with their swords and axes, and it's not even it's just bouncing off. And Grendel just munches and crunches his way through the people. Ooh. Now, Grendel goes off into the night after he's wrecked the place, feeling pretty happy with himself, I imagine, because now he can go and get a nice night's sleep, and he's got a nice full tummy full of Dane. Dane snacks. So, King Hrothgar doesn't know what to do. He wants revenge, of course, on this terrible creature who's come and eaten loads of his friend. But how is he going to do it? He knows that he cannot hurt it. Ooh, Sidney and Ayla say he looks like a pig with a gorilla head. He does a bit, doesn't he? A gorilla pig with maybe chicken feet. And he has a face on his tummy. He almost does have a little face on his tummy, doesn't he? Yes, he's a creepy beast indeed. Now, for a long time, and we're not quite sure how long, nobody goes to the hall. Maybe every now and again somebody tries to go and sort of light up the fires and fix the mess, but Grendel will often come along and just scare them away. People are too afraid to go and party anymore because everyone knows that if they do, Grendel might just eat them up. Ooh, a terrible beast. Lots of people come to try and kill Grendel, to try and track him down to his lair and destroy him, but no one can do it. Until our hero arrives. Ooh, the word of Grendel spreads far and wide, all the way to the land of the Yats. Now, you spell Yat like this, but I'm told that Yat is how you pronounce it. Oh, hang on, let me write it better. That's how you spell Yat in this particular story. Now, Yat is part of Sweden at this time, so it's a little bit to the north and the east of Denmark. And there there's another kingdom with a fine king of their own, and the king has a fine follower called Beowulf, who's already known as a bit of a legend. He's good, and we don't know the details here, but he's proven himself to be a good warrior. Jasper says, "Who are we without our parties? Nothing. We need to get rid of this monster, the party-pooping monster Grendel." So, Beowulf, he comes to Harlot and he says, "Don't worry, King Hrothgar. I will defeat the beast for you because I am strong and tough and I am Beowulf." I don't know how old he is, a Viking raider. He can be 17 if you like. Our monster, maybe, yes. So, Beowulf, he arrives, and because everyone's so happy, especially King Hrothgar, that he's come to defeat the beast, they put on a great big party for him, a wild celebration in the Hall of Harlow. And of course, as we probably expect, when there's a party, there's an angry Grendel. So, the party finishes a bit early this night. That's the plan. And everyone goes to sleep just there on the floor of the hall. Now, this isn't unusual because often after a big party, everyone would just sleep on the floor. It's nice and warm in the hall and you don't want to have to trudge back through the snow to your own house. And it's when everyone's asleep that Grendel sneaks in, looking for people to eat. Now, Beowulf, he's pretending to be asleep. He's being very quiet, very sneaky. And Grendel sneaks up to him and he's about to rip his head off when Beowulf jumps up and the two of them start a massive fight. Hacking and chopping and chopping and hacking. Grendel is trying to rip his body to bits, and Beowulf keeps on stabbing and slicing and kicking and punching, and it's a great old battle. Now, I've already said that most people cannot hurt Grendel. He's just too tough. And Beowulf, he isn't much different. I mean, he's a hero and he's pretty strong and he's pretty impressive, but he's still not much more impressive than others. He cannot kill the beast. The beast just keeps on flinging him around. Eventually, though, Beowulf finds a bit of a weak spot in the monster, and he chops off Grendel's arm. Ooh. He's got his arm. Now, Grendel, at this, he freaks out a little bit, as you'd imagine, and he runs away from the hall, back to wherever he comes from. And sadly for Grendel, because he's lost an arm, when he gets back to his lair, he eventually dies from his wounds. So Beowulf has been victorious, and that vicious monster who wanted to poop every party has been defeated. Da, 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 da. Now, what do we do when we have defeated a monster? We have another great big party! Woo! And this one's particularly large because Grendel has gone and nobody can spoil their parties. And so King Hrothgar says, let's have the biggest party of all. And so the people come from far and wide and they fill the hall with noise and music and dancing and drinking and wrestling and, well, all the kind of things that Danes do when there's a party, of course. Beowulf is given pride of place because he is the hero of the hour. Well done, Beowulf. Everyone, we can imagine they making speeches about how great he is. Maybe he shows everyone the severed arm. Maybe he walks around waving it around saying, ha, I have the arm of Grendel. I don't know what you do with it. Maybe he makes it into an ornament or something. But everyone is happy and everything is fine. And the partying goes on for days. But, it turns out that monsters like Grendel, they're not so different from you and me. No. Grendel may have been a bit cross about the noise, and yes, he may have gone too far by eating Danes. I mean, he maybe should have asked them to turn the music down first, but there you are, that's monsters for you. But monsters, they're not so different, because just like you and I, every monster has a mummy. And that mummy, when her poor son comes home to her with his arm ripped off and then dies there and then, she gets pretty angry. I'd say very angry, in fact. Uh-oh, says Isla. Yes, uh-oh indeed. Because if you thought Grendel was bad, Grendel's mum is way worse. She's a proper swamp beast, like a number one super duper swamp beast. Grendel was good. I mean, he was big, he was tough. He's the kind of guy who could just eat a Dane. But his mum is way bigger, way stinkier, way slimier, a little bit weirdly furry. I don't know. And yeah, she's going to come because she doesn't like the noise either. And now she really doesn't like King Hrothgar, and she really doesn't like Beowulf. Noah and Shepard say, we are in trouble. We are indeed in trouble. And if only they had known, maybe King Hrothgar should have closed up this great big drinking hall, or at least had a quiet party. But along she comes. Now, we don't know, because the original poem doesn't tell us. It doesn't give us a name for the monster that's going to come, the mother of Grendel. So I don't know, maybe you've got an idea of a name that you would like to give our monster for today. Otherwise, we will just call it Grendel's mum, I suppose. So if you do have any ideas for good names, oh, I like that, Heidi. We're going to go with the first one in was Susan. Okay, so the vicious, the vicious and terrible monster, Susan. A name to strike fear through the people of Denmark. Jeff is a good idea as well, Lyle. But we'll go with Susan, just because it sends shivers down my spine. And so, there they are, mid-party. Now, this party goes on for a few days, and Susan, she doesn't come straight away. I have to get used to that. And Beowulf, he gets loads of gifts and special things. But Susan doesn't attack straight away. She keeps a little eye. Maybe she has monster spies watching the hall. She doesn't attack until she knows that Beowulf has gone to a different part of the kingdom um, on business. We're not quite sure what, we're not told why, but for one reason or another, he's not in the hall. And that is when Susan attacks. Now, here she is. This is a representation. I mean, we don't know, again, exactly what she looks like, but we do know that she comes from a swamp. So we're thinking maybe a little bit slimy, a little bit gross, yeah. Bigger than her son, more dangerous than her son, and she smashes down the door to the hall, and she starts, just like Grendel had done originally, picking people up and shoving them in her mouth, just eating them up. And she's so cross that she's smashing the whole place to bits, and she's just, whoa, incredibly, incredibly frightening. Now, some people again, some of the Danes, they remember how Beowulf had defeated Grendel, and so they start attacking Grendel's mum, Susan, with their swords, with their axes, with their maces, but it all bounces off, even more so than with Grendel. I mean, nobody can even scratch Susan. She's just terrifying. It's like she's coated in metal or something. Swampy metal. Ugh, I don't know what swampy metal would be like, but this is it. Whoa, really gross and really tough. So Susan munches her way through the people of the hall again and then disappears off into the night, screeching and yowling. Because of course we got to remember that she's very sad. Yeah, maybe under different circumstances, Susan would be a completely pleasant and quite lovely swamp monster. Maybe normally she'd like to come in, have a cup of tea, have a chat, that kind of thing. But we're not dealing with a normal day here. This is a swamp monster whose son has been killed by a terrible Yat, and so she's not in a good frame of mind. She doesn't want to sit and have tea. She just wants to eat people. Kind of scary. Now, Beowulf, the next day, he comes back to Harlot, to Harlow, the drinking hall, and he finds a complete mess. And there's King Hrothgar, very upset because, well, he's lost everything again. His party hall has been destroyed. Oh, poor King Hrothgar. All he wants is to party all day. I mean, what's wrong with that? But he comes back, does Beowulf, and he sees all this mess, and he says, "Don't worry. I will go and defeat the monster. I will go into the lair of the Susan, and there I shall end her wicked days." Very noble. Yeah, very bold. He's not scared. Now, King Hrothgar has a little chat with Beowulf. Says, "Beowulf, you're a brilliant hero. You're amazing. It's great. I mean, I've never seen a monster killer like you before. I mean, the way you took that arm off, really quite stylish and, very forthright. You're a good monster hunter. But never think that you can do things on your own, because everyone needs help. And the most important thing, if you are going to be a hero, like I once was, now I am old, now I'm more interested in partying, but if you are going to be a brilliant hero, then the thing you need to do is look after your people. You need to work together, you need to give them rewards, you need to treat them kindly, you need to celebrate when the good things happen, So don't go off there on your own, Beowulf. Take some people with you, some trusted friends and warriors, and together you can defeat the Susan. Not on your own. So Beowulf thinks about this. Yes, maybe I need some backup. And so he takes some warriors with him, some of his own warriors who have come all the way from Yat or Yatland, and others who were King Hrothgar's men, one of whom was his most trusted soldier. Hmm. And so together they head out on the hunt for Susan. Hmm. Um, oh, Fingerstail asked, what about father? There is no father, there is only a mother. I mean, maybe there's like a spin-off story we could do where we come up with the tragic story of Grendel's dad, and I don't know how he fell into a volcano or something. But wherever he was originally, he's not here now. There's just the Grendel and the Susan. That's all there is. Yes. Or possibly Grendel's dad, Thomas, says a Viking Radio. Maybe. Maybe his dad was called Thomas and he fell into a volcano. We just don't know. Unfortunately, trying to track down the history of monsters like this is hard because they don't keep records. You see, they don't write much down. They're too busy being all swampy and monstrous and eating people. You know, the kind of thing. They're not so strong on writing biographies. Heidi says, can you imagine how strong Thomas would be? The father of Grendel. Yes. um, so off goes Beowulf and his trusty band of sidekicks. And well, they need to work out where Susan is. That's a bit tricky. So they start to follow clues. At first, it's quite easy because there's like bits of Dane to follow that Grendel's mum, Susan, has been dropping out of her mouth as she fled. So they know the basic direction. Yeah, bits of Dane and blood-splattered snow. That'll point the way to go. And so they follow her for a bit. They follow her out of the hills into a really gross, swampy area. Yes, Sharon's saying that Grendel looks like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, there's definitely a bit of Gollum about these guys, isn't there? Although Gollum's quite small. These are quite big monsters. Um, so they follow along until they get to this great big swamp. And there in the swamp is a great big lake. And somehow Beowulf realizes that Susan must be living in an underground lair beneath the lake. Ooh. Now, he wants to go and confront the beast in her own lair. But to do that, he's going to have to dive into the lake, swim all the way to the bottom, find his way to the secret cavern or home that the beast has, and there confront her. It's going to be tricky. Hello, Jeff and Josh. Now, his friends, they decide that, well, they're probably not going to go into the lake. No offense, Beowulf, but it seems like a mad idea. I mean, not many people live under lakes, and getting under lakes is difficult. And besides, I don't want to get wet because, well, I'll ruin my clothes and my hair and my beard. I've got to get a frizzy beard. So his friends, they decide to wait for him on the shore. But one of them does give him a special sword. A sword that has been proven to be strong and tough. So, Beowulf, he takes a deep breath. He takes the sword that has been given to him and he dives into the lake. The kind of dark, creepy, swampy lake. Yeah, remember, this is a swampy kind of area. Hello, Zaya. Now, as he swims down through the water, Susan sends vicious creatures to bother him and to try and put him off and to try and confuse him. And so the water around him bubbles with the spirits of the water. Here's an image of a water spirit or something like this. Again, in the poem, we're not totally told what they look like. So I went with the Greek idea of the naiad, these spirits of water that mess with you and upset you and confuse you. They're not particularly dangerous, but if you're on a mission, they can be very, very distracting. So Beowulf, he's there, he's swimming down into the depths of the lake, and all around him are these lights and noises, and every now and again he gets a poking, and every now and again he gets a tickling, and it's starting to put him off. At some point, he realizes he doesn't know which way is up and which way is down anymore, because he keeps on getting spun around by the water spirits, giggling and wiggling in his ears, until, because he is strong, and because he is tough, and because he is Beowulf, he manages to keep his cool and go deeper and deeper. He holds his breath and he drops like a stone right to the bottom of the lake. And he scrabbles around all the time, being tickled and poked by the annoying spirits of the water, until he finds a tunnel, a wet, watery tunnel that leads up and out. And just before he runs out of breath, he pushes himself up this tunnel, and his head pops up into a dark and grisly cave. But he has made it. Now, in the cave, of course, there waiting is none other than the vicious, terrible Susan. Da 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 da. Beowulf and Susan are going to fight. Now, I've already said that Susan is way more powerful than Beowulf, way more powerful than Grendel. Nobody could possibly ever defeat Susan, not with a normal weapon. Thankfully, Beowulf doesn't have a normal weapon. He's got a magic sword that was given to him by his friends. A Viking raider has asked me, what are his friends' names? I don't know. I mean, I do know, I've read them, but I can't remember. There's something Danish. So for our intents and purposes today, they are just his friends, his buddies, his pals. And he's got this magic sword, and he's feeling pretty confident. Now, the two of them, Susan and Beowulf, they start fighting. Susan is particularly angry, of course. You killed my son. He was a good boy. Oh, all he wanted was a nice night's sleep. You noisy, terrible Danes, making all that racket. Oh, I should gobble you up. That's what she said. I mean, that's the English translation. Her real words were basically means the same thing, but in monster language. I'm fluent. Now, they fight. They battle. They roll around. At one point, Susan jumps on top of Beowulf and pins him to the ground. He's struggling. She's about to rip his head off. But he manages to reach for his sword. He picks it up and he jabs it right up into Susan's neck. And he watches in horror as his magical sword melts as it touches her. She's not scratched, she's not hurt. All he's got now is a sword handle, a hilt. The blade has just melted to mush because Susan is so powerful. Beowulf manages to roll away, scramble away from Susan, but she keeps chasing him around, shouting in her monster language. And poor old Beowulf, he doesn't know what to do. Until he spies on a wall in the cave, because Susan, she's a bit of a hoarder. I mean, she's a monster after all. As you can see in this picture, there's piles of gold and weaponry and armor all over the place. She's managed to keep for herself and put in a pride of place a humongous axe, like a really big axe. In fact, this axe is a magical axe which was designed in ages gone by for one main purpose: to kill giants. This is a giant axe for giant killing. And Susan, although she is powerful and strong and tough and can melt magical swords with her very presence, she's maybe not as powerful as a fully grown giant. So, as they're scrapping, as they're fighting, Beowulf inches his way slowly towards the great big axe that's hanging on the wall. Now, this axe is so big that you or I, especially me, I don't know about you, maybe if you work together, but me, I couldn't even lift it. It's absolutely humongous. Beowulf, though, he is incredibly strong. I mean, he's like super strong. And because he's on the point of being completely destroyed by a terrible monster, it probably gives him extra strength. And so he gets to the wall, he pulls the axe down. He's got to hold it with both hands and probably like catch it under his chin as well. It's so strong, it's so heavy. And he staggers over to Susan. And just as Susan lunges for him, he puts in all his strength and whoomph, takes her head off. Says Susan as her head flies across the room and lands in a corner. She is defeated. Hooray! Now, Beowulf, he doesn't leave empty-handed. He takes with him not Susan, but he sees in the corner of the cave the dead body, the one-armed dead body of Grendel. And so Beowulf, he takes a sword from the pile of, nonsense that's hanging around the cave, someone's old sword, and he takes the dead head of Grendel. Now we can see Grendel's bone poking out here where he's already lost his arm. Ugh. Now he's going to lose his head. And Beowulf is taking his head to prove to everyone that he is a true hero. Sharon says, no, she was so young. Poor Susan. Why did she have to go? Oh. Remember, guys, this is all because some Danes want to have a party, okay? This is what it's about, okay? Don't forget that. It's very important. They want to have a party. Monsters will be killed because the party must go on. So, Beowulf, he takes the head. He swims back up out of the lake, and he presents it to his men. Hurrah! Head of Grendel! Who the man? You the man! Shout everyone. And now that two monsters have been defeated, Jeff and Josh are very sad. They too are the children of Susan. Oh, so sad. So sad. I'm sorry to hear it. What do you do when you've defeated not one but two monsters? And you've got a fancy new head for your head collection? Why? There's only one thing you can do, of course. Have another party! Woo! So, the feasting hall, that's it, Viking Raider. The feasting hall, fills up once again with people from all across the land who obviously haven't learnt their lesson yet. And they have another great big party where they celebrate Beowulf and his victory. I imagine they throw the head of Grendel down onto the floor and all dance around it like mad things. Hurrah! And hashtag the party must go on. It must go on because this is Denmark and, well, it's a long time ago, so there's probably not much else to do. Party! So this celebration is particularly joyous. Everyone decides that Beowulf is like the best hero ever, probably even better than King Hrothgar himself, although when he was young, he was pretty powerful too. And they have a very jolly time. Now, the good news for our Danes and our Yats is that this party is not interrupted. No more monsters are left to come and bother it. So the people just party down. Now, Beowulf, he is given gold, he is given riches, and he heads back to Yatland, where he, lives quite well. In fact, he's so famous by the time he gets back that a few years later, his own king dies and he gets to inherit the kingdom, and he becomes king of all that he surveys. Good old Beowulf. And 50 years pass by, 50 years from when he killed Grendel. And all that time, he looks after the people of Yat. He remembers Hrothgar's words, and he gives them parties. He gives them celebrations. He gives them presents and prizes when they do well. Yes, 50 years, Explorer Gengar. By this point, he too is an old man. Hrothgar is long dead. And, everyone remembers the glory of Beowulf, but to be honest, Beowulf's getting on. I mean, we can imagine he's probably about 80 years old by this point. And everyone has to, slow down as they get older. So The days of killing monsters are long behind him. Viking Raider asks, "Are you descended from Beowulf?" I mean, probably. I mean, it's more than likely, isn't it? Really? Yeah, I'd go for that. Yeah, definitely. um, but not everything stays perfect, and all heroes must, of course, one day pass on. And well, the way of Beowulf's passing involves more monsters, but not swamp monsters this time. No. Instead, we got dragon problems. Dragon problems. Now, everything's going fine. The people of Beowulf's country are happy, but the poem tells us that 50 years later, one of Beowulf's slaves, one of his servants, is a bit, a bit greedy, basically. And everyone knows that to the north of Yat there lives a dragon. A dragon which is powerful and strong and breathes fire and all that jazz. But most of the time, the dragon just keeps itself to itself. The people keep themselves to themselves. But it is a dragon. And as everyone knows, dragons like gold. They like to store up gold. Yes, no, this does very much, this picture does remind me of Frodo and Smaug, of course. Yes, it's the same kind of thing. And, maybe, just maybe, more than likely, this is what J.R.R. Tolkien was thinking when he wrote The Hobbit in the first place. He liked the idea of somebody sneaking into a dragon's hoard and stealing some loot. And so that's what Frodo does, of course, in The Lord of the Rings. But this was written a long, long time before that. So this slave, he's a bit of a greedy one. He's looked after pretty well. He's not the kind of slave that is abused or tortured and beaten up and things like that. He's more of a servanty kind of slave. But still, he's not happy with the way that Beowulf, the king, is very rich and his trusted followers are very rich, and he's not very rich at all. So he decides that he's going to go north to the home of the dragon and steal some gold for himself, which he does. He goes there, he takes some gold. In our picture here, he takes a gold cup, a chalice of some kind, and he sneaks out, thinking he's been very brave and very clever, thinking that the dragon couldn't possibly have noticed the little thief in there, because the dragon seemed to be asleep. But as we know, if we've ever read or seen the film of The Hobbit, it doesn't work out so good, because the dragon sniffs the little thief. He can tell straight away. Now, dragons they're very different from humans, if you hadn't noticed. I mean, for a start, they're big lizards with wings and they can breathe fire and stuff. But when it comes to their treasure, we might look at a bunch of treasure that's been collected by a dragon and think, well, it's just a bunch of nonsense. There's loads of bits and pieces and it's all over the place. It's not stored particularly well. The dragon sleeps on it. Yeah. So probably we would think a dragon would notice one or two little bits of gold going missing. But dragons aren't like that. Dragons, even though it looks like a mess to us, they know exactly how much gold they have. They know exactly where each coin, each little gem, each little cup is. And if you take it, they notice straight away, and they will stop at nothing to get it back. Oh, wow. Oh, lots of people saying they like The Hobbit here. Grace and Jay are saying that they have read The Hobbit once and The Lord of the Rings 3 times. Oh, that's a lot. I've read The Lord of the Rings about 3 times as well, probably, yes. And Molly and Elizabeth's teacher likes The Hobbit. Yeah, no, it's a very good story, isn't it? And you can see from Beowulf that J.R.R. Tolkien, he spent a lot of time reading Beowulf, and he liked to put that in his stories too. So we can think of this slave, this character in Beowulf, as being the original Frodo, maybe, because as he takes the cup, the dragon wakes up, sniffs around, realizes what's been taken, and he flaps up into the air to get his revenge on the humans. Now, he doesn't know exactly which human to get revenge on, so he does what any self-respecting dragon would do, and he flies down to Beowulf's kingdom and just starts burning things down. James asks, can the dragon's name be Martin? Well, yes, it can. Martin the dragon, a name to strike terror through the ages. The vicious dragon Martin. Oh, and Nias had The Hobbit written read to you as well. That's brilliant. So, this is not Smaug. This is like Smaug, but Martin. Think Smaug, slightly smaller, maybe. Don't know. And so Martin the dragon just starts terrorizing the kingdom of Beowulf, setting things on fire, eating sheep and people, causing all kinds of bother. Now, what Beowulf needs, of course, just like King Helmgard did, he needs somebody to come and save the day. He needs a hero. He is now the old king. He needs someone young. Unfortunately for Beowulf, this is not going to happen, though. And it's not long before Beowulf realizes, well, there's no one coming from Denmark to help me. There's no one coming from Sweden. Looks like we're on our own. Me, the 80-year-old king here. But he decides that he needs to head out and defeat this dragon himself. But he remembers his old king's words. Don't go alone. Take your friends with you. They will help you. I don't know why I'm saying it in a ghost voice. It's memory. Ooh. And so he gets together his strongest, youngest, most fearsome fighters, and together they ride off to confront the dragon. Ooh. Old man warrior, yeah! Good shout out. Now, here he is with his friends, heading out on their horses north. Now, remember, it's Sweden, so it's probably quite snowy. So we can imagine the horses, like in this picture, their hooves deep in snow. And it just gets colder and snowier the further north they go. And of course, dragons, as I'm hoping everyone knows, live in mountains. They've got to go higher, and it gets colder until eventually they get to the lair of Martin, the great big Martin cavern. Ooh. So Beowulf and his men, as they get closer and closer, they start to hear the rumbling in the mountain. They can hear the deep, heavy breathing of Martin the dragon as he lies on his great big golden bed. And they come right to the very entrance to the cave. Beowulf and his brave soldiers. And Beowulf remembers, always take your friends with you. Your friends will help you out. And he turns to his men and he says, get off your horses, guys. Get your weapons ready. We're going in. So, the men jump off their horses. They ready their weapons. Beowulf, he takes his sword, the very same sword they used to cut the dead head off of Grendel. And he takes his great big shield. And he turns to his men. He says, charge! And he charges into the cave. And all of his men don't. They don't charge. No, we don't want to fight, Martin. Sorry, Beowulf. Yeah, a bit scary, actually. We'll wait here. You fight the dragon. And yeah, I mean, we've got to look after these horses. We can't be dragon fighting today. Sorry. Yeah, you look great, though. For an 80-year-old man, you're doing really well. I mean, that charge was impressive. I mean, they're all clapping, maybe. But the important thing is, they're not following Beowulf. Beowulf is on his own. He charges into the cave, straight up to Martin, and he looks around and realizes there's no one there to help him. And the two of them, Dragon and Beowulf, they come into a great big showdown. Here we are. Here's Beowulf. Oh, in this picture, he's got a spear, look. But he starts to fight the dragon. Now, the dragon in this picture looks rather terrifying, and he is rather huge. Our first picture of the dragon, of Martin, made him seem quite itty-bitty. But of course, this is a dragon against a man, an 80-year-old king man, and the fight is going to be pretty tricky. Now, to give Beowulf credit, he's not bad. For an old man, for an old hero, he's not bad at all. He's climbing on the back of the dragon. He's sticking his sword into his head. The dragon can't quite reach him, but the dragon every now and again will open up its vast wings, and Beowulf will fly off and land in a pile of gold just to start the tussle again. The dragon ends up covered in little nicks and scratches, but to be honest, Beowulf isn't achieving much. Beowulf, for his part, it's not long before his shield has melted, before he has burns all over him from the fire of the dragon, before he has a great big cut down his face from where the dragon has caught him with a claw, and it looks like Beowulf is going to lose this one. Poor Beowulf. If only his friends were there to help him, but they're looking after the horses outside, you know, it's kind of important. So, Beowulf realizes there's only really one thing he can do. He looks the great big dragon in the eye. He's lost his shield. He's covered in scars and scratches and bruises and burns. And all he has left is his sword. And so he charges the dragon, not trying to jump on its back and cut it up like he had before, but he charges it straight in the mouth, and the dragon opens its mouth to breathe fire, and Beowulf, he runs straight in and he stabs the dragon in his mouth straight through to his brain, and Martin dies, but not until he has unleashed his fiery furnace, and Beowulf too is killed. Both Martin and Beowulf. No, not my friend Martin. Oh no. Beowulf and Martin are both dead, dragon and hero. And after checking to make sure that the dragon is definitely dead, Beowulf's men, they enter the cave, and they take Beowulf's body, and they carry it very solemnly, with great ceremony, back to Yatland, where they set up a huge pile of wood, and they place the body of Beowulf on it, and they set fire to it. And I like to think that as they said goodbye to Beowulf, they had a great big party, because, after all, if there's one moral to this story, it's party down. Poor Beowulf. That is the end of his life. And his friends, maybe some of them felt a bit sheepish. Sharon says that the other Vikings are wusses. Yeah, maybe they are. Maybe they should have been there to help him. But, you know, at least they were there at the end for his funeral to give him a very good party and send him off in style to the next life. There you go. So that's my version, at least, of the story of Beowulf. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see all you all next week. Well, we'll do, another myth from history. I don't know where to go yet, but I'll think of something. Thank you very much, guys. It was wonderful to see you all. Do they collect the gold, says Bilal? I don't know if they collect the gold. I imagine they do. I mean, you can't just leave gold lying around, can you? Yes, I imagine they took all of Martin's gold and spent it on the party, maybe. Maybe it was a really good party. Good question. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Adios.